King Charles III, 75 years old, just made a startling statement that dispels all doubt and validates what many have long assumed after decades of speculation, and the future king, his private life, and his attitude toward the monarchy were the subject of rumors. King Charles seems at last prepared to confront the reality of what this admission may entail for the royal family, his legacy, and the future of the British crown, as shown by this shocking confession. Let's explore King Charles's fantastic specifics. Struggles as the heir. King Charles's life was destined to be different from when he was born on November 14, 1948. Even though he was only a boy growing up in the shadow of a powerful monarch, King Charles's upbringing was unlike any other child in Britain because of royal traditions, constant public attention, and a strict sense of duty to the crown. At 75, King Charles finally admits what we have all suspected, and what he said may come as a shock. But before we get to that, you should know a few things about him. Charles was also destined to become king, as he was the eldest son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. Education and personality. First, as a youngster, Charles was never the future king everyone had anticipated. In contrast to the stern, self-assured leaders the public was used to, he was more shy and introverted, displaying a sensitive and contemplative temperament. Charles seemed to struggle with the immense expectations placed upon him from his schooling at Gordonstown, where he was reportedly unhappy with his awkward public appearances as a young man. It became clear early on that the pressures of royal life were weighing heavily on him throughout his youth and into his early adulthood. In contrast, his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, quickly took to her royal duties. It was hard for Charles to live up to the expectations of a future monarch. His hobbies had nothing to do with the customary responsibilities of a royal. Intellectual pursuits. While waiting for the throne, he demonstrated a strong passion for intellectual pursuits, the arts, and environmental issues, areas he would later champion. However, at the time, the public's perception of what a future king should be like was different from this. They wanted a strong, charismatic leader who could withstand the demands of modern monarchy, not a man who seemed uncertain, withdrawn, and occasionally even disconnected from the problems that his future subjects faced daily. Charles's reserved demeanor was frequently misunderstood as distant. He was often criticized for being too harsh or not having the same charm as his mother. Both the public and the media closely examined his public appearances, raising concerns about his capacity to assume the position of king when the time came. Avoiding the spotlight. There were rumors, even in royal circles, that he may not be the best candidate to guide the kingdom into the future. These worries were exacerbated by his discomfort at public ceremonies and propensity to stay out of the spotlight. The presence of his mother, Queen Elizabeth, who was well liked by the populace and renowned for her firm, hands-on attitude to her royal responsibilities, added to the strain. Charles, in contrast, seemed less decisive and less equipped for the throne, which raised questions about his readiness to take on the position of king. He was often compared to his mother by the people, who questioned whether he had the skills necessary to govern the monarchy in a world that was changing quickly. As he grew older, some of Charles's personal choices only served to confirm these suspicions. The Diana years. The world watched excitedly as Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer were married in a grand royal wedding in 1981. The young couple immediately became a worldwide phenomenon after the breathtaking wedding at St. Paul's Cathedral. The public loved Princess Diana, who was just 20 years old. She seemed to fit the perfect description of a contemporary princess. She was lovely and graceful. It appeared to be a marriage made in heaven at first glance, but a connection would emerge below the royal exterior. There were indications of marital problems between Charles and Diana. Charles was tense because of their 12-year age difference and radically different personalities. Cracks in the royal facade. Already habituated to the demands of royal life, he was in his early 30s and concentrated on his responsibilities and hobbies. On the other hand, Diana found it challenging to adjust to the stressful spotlight that accompanied her status as a royal family member after being forced into the global spotlight. The pair captivated the public despite these underlying problems, and Diana soon rose to prominence as the people's princess. It became evident that Charles and Diana were headed in somewhat different directions as their marriage developed. Diana's allure and kindness made her more famous than Charles in the eyes of the general people. Diana's growing popularity. She naturally connected with people through public appearances and charitable activities. On the other hand, Charles often struck me as aloof and repressed. The media greatly aided this impression, which portrayed Charles as the distant, emotionless future king and Diana as the kind, approachable princess. Their marriage came under more public scrutiny, and everyone watched Charles's every action. Diana's increasing popularity emphasized the public's perception of Charles's inadequacies, and the media often compared the two. The more Diana shone, the brighter she became. It didn't take long for whispers of marital discord to start spreading when Charles seemed to recede into the background. Camila Parker Bowles. The flaws in their royal union came to the public's notice. Charles's persistent behavior was one of the main reasons their marriage failed. Connection with Camila Parker Bowles. Charles had a strong connection with Camila even before he married Diana, and they remained together throughout his marriage. The media hysteria around Charles and Diana's relationship intensified when information about his engagement with Camila was made public, and the disclosure of Charles's adultery tarnished his reputation and sparked pity for Diana, the abused wife. Diana's well-known 1995 appearance with the BBC's Panorama widened the gulf. Diana's struggles. She spoke candidly about her difficulties in the royal family. About Charles's continuing connection with Camila, she made the now famous remark that there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded, due to her mental health issues and the strain of her marriage to Charles. Charles's image suffered greatly, and widespread sympathy for Diana surged. He was seen as the guy who had deceived the beloved and failed in his marriage. The separation. Princess Diana's legacy grew even more after their 1992 separation and subsequent 1996 divorce. She rose to fame by leveraging her position to promote issues like HIV and AIDS research and landmine awareness. She was one of the most respected persons in the world because of her empathy and capacity for human connection. On the other hand, Charles was still having trouble with his public image. Diana's shadow hung heavy over Charles even after their divorce, and he could not shake the impression that he was the aloof, unappreciative husband who had failed to value his former wife. Tragedy and the public view. The world grieved Diana's untimely death in a car accident in 1997, and the royal family came under heavy fire for how they handled the crisis. The public's perception of Charles, in particular, as emotionally unsuited to the emotional demands of leadership, was reinforced by his perceived emotional detachment. The immense famous love for Diana and the continuous media attention to her legacy continued to define Charles despite his best efforts to manage the fallout from her death. His image as the man who mistreated the people's princess persisted far into his senior years. Still, in recent months, there have been indications that Charles has started to investigate his history more thoroughly, notably his connection with Diana. A reformed king. At 75, Charles seems to be reevaluating Diana's place in his life and influencing how the general public views him and the monarchy. Diana's legacy endures today, and Charles, now king, seems to have realized how important it is to engage the people in a more intimate and caring manner, as Diana did. There are indications that Charles could have changed his mind about some of his previous choices and acts, especially about his marriage and relationship with Camila. However, the harm inflicted by those years cannot be reversed. Charles has learned from his history based on his current attitude to his royal obligations. Princess Diana's legacy. Diana's troubled marriage and its aftermath have undoubtedly shaped Charles's public image. Still, in his later years, he appears to be acknowledging these past struggles and taking on his role with a seriousness and reflection that may very well be related to the enduring legacy of Diana. This could have led Charles to adopt a more sympathetic and hands-on approach to his role as king, perhaps in an attempt to finally win over a public that has long viewed him as distant and out of touch. Lessons from Lady Diana's recollection. But this isn't the only item related to his eventual admission. Longest-serving heir. After years of waiting, I'm 75 years old, so listen to me. The problem is that King Charles is the only heir apparent in British history to have served the longest. While the public concentrated on the Queen's continuous service and unwavering leadership, he waited in line for the throne for more than 70 years, living beneath the shadow of Queen Elizabeth's reign. Charles's status as the future monarch often seemed less transparent and more like an undefined weight. He spent all his professional life preparing for a career that always appeared just out of reach, leaving him frustrated for decades. Charles had to wait a very long time. He remained in this protracted waiting period longer than any previous British king had ever been an heir. Handling the kingly duties. It helped create the impression that Charles was a guy in limbo, ever on the brink of becoming king, but never quite making it. As the years went by, it's easy to picture how frustrated he must have been at not being able to fulfill the role that had been given to him from birth. This annoyance was also visible to the public. As I have already shown, as Charles grew older, there were persistent doubts regarding his ability to succeed his mother as king, and more significantly, whether he would ever become king. Doubts about skipping a line. Well into her 90s, some began to wonder whether Charles would inherit the throne at all, or if the crown would skip directly to his son, Prince William. These doubts, coupled with the public's preference for the younger, more charismatic members of the royal family, only deepened the uncertainties surrounding Charles's future role as king. However, Charles didn't spend these years of waiting idly while the throne may have remained out of reach. Charles found other ways to leave his mark on the world. In the absence of royal duties, he focused his energy on causes that were close to his heart, most notably environmentalism, architecture, and charitable work. These efforts became a significant part of his public identity, offering a glimpse of the man behind the title of Prince of Wales. Charles has long been an advocate for environmental conservation. Even decades before climate change became a mainstream issue, he was sounding the alarm about the dangers of deforestation, pollution, and unsustainable agriculture. A visionary. Particularly in the early years, when environmental concerns were not yet on the international radar, his dedication to the environment was sometimes viewed with suspicion. However, Charles continued to address the issue by using his position to support conservation initiatives and sustainable practices long before they were in vogue. His efforts eventually brought him recognition for being progressive. Meanwhile, many who thought a future monarch should concentrate more on customary responsibilities criticized it. Planning and architecture as other passions. Charles was interested in architecture and urban planning in addition to his work with the environment. Being an outspoken opponent of modern architecture, he is renowned for having expressed his contempt for some contemporary designs disconnected from the UK's historical and cultural legacy. His opinions on architecture were contentious, especially when he openly questioned numerous well-known structures' designs. Despite the criticism, Charles was dedicated to maintaining the picturesque nature of Britain's towns and cities. He even established the Prince's Foundation, which advocates for sustainable urban development beyond conventional construction techniques. Work for charities. Through the Prince's Trust, which he established in 1976, Charles also dedicated himself to various humanitarian endeavors for these particular causes. Charles assisted underprivileged young people by giving them chances to acquire skills and find work. Hundreds of thousands of young people have benefited from the Prince's Trust throughout the years, establishing Charles as a philanthropist committed to really improving the lives of others. However, the public's perception of Charles remained split despite these initiatives. While he was respected in certain circles for his environmental activism and humanitarian efforts, many people still thought he was a little out of touch with the times. Some saw his vocal opinions on organic farming and architecture as eccentric, if not snobbish. The issue of whether Charles was qualified to be king persisted for years. The doubting question. As it became clear that the populace, used to Queen Elizabeth's stable and conventional leadership, wasn't always specific that Charles was of the same caliber, this issue of readiness shadowed Charles throughout his reign. Doubts regarding his capacity to succeed the throne were further stoked by his hardships, which included the difficult years of his marriage to Diana. There were worries that Charles would not be the steady, reliable monarch the nation required in recent months, since even his forward thinking of environmentalism, now universally accepted, was formerly seen as out of the ordinary. But when he assumes his throne, King Charles seems to have started facing long-standing concerns about him. Looking back, Charles's role as a father to Prince William and Prince Harry has been marked by both moments of pride and deep struggles following Princess Diana's tragic death. The loss of Diana left an unquestionable void in their family, and Charles was tasked with guiding William and Harry through their most formative years while facing public scrutiny in many ways. Charles's relationship with his sons has been complex, especially with the media constantly spotlighting them. For Prince William, who was always seen as the more dutiful and prepared for royal responsibilities, his bond with his father was occasionally strained but remained relatively stable. Charles provided William with a route comparable to his own, one rooted in the monarchy's customs and standards. The turbulent relationship with Prince Harry. However, in recent years, especially when Harry left his royal responsibilities and relocated to the United States, their relationship has been far more tumultuous. There was a noticeable split in the dynamic family. A profound rift that hasn't been repaired was created by Harry's sincere critiques of the royal family, including comments on his father's parenting style and the organization's handling of Meghan Markle. Charles again encountered public scrutiny over his capacity to uphold unity within the family. Charles's perspective may have changed lately due to personal concerns, even if the family struggles. There have been rumors that Charles has started to understand the importance of his roles as a parent, a public person, and a king. Although they are not explicitly mentioned, the difficult times he had with his sons. He has indeed contributed to the development of the man he is now, who seems to be reassessing his personal and royal responsibilities at 75. Nevertheless, we should examine Camila and his function as king since he is a person. King Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles. One of King Charles's most talked about parts has always been his romance with Camilla Parker Bowles. Their 2005 wedding ceremony, which many saw as a contentious move for the future king for years, followed a controversy that started during his marriage to Princess Diana. The media depicted Camilla unfavorably, sometimes referred to as the other lady, with a role in Charles and Diana's marriage disintegrating. However, as the years went by, Camilla's story changed. She started playing a more active and visible role in royal duties, working alongside Charles in various charitable and public appearances. The couple's dedication to their causes and consistent presence in public life gradually loosened public attitudes toward the woman who would become their future queen. At the time, public opinion was firmly against her, and many questioned whether the British people would ever accept her in a royal capacity. Princess Diana versus Camilla Parker Bowles. When Charles took the throne in 2022, Camilla's reputation changed from scandalous to acceptable, even if she may never have attained Diana's level of popularity. Camilla was crowned Queen Consort, a designation that still causes some debate, but indicates that she is on equal footing with Charles as the head of state. There were difficulties in Charles's first few months as king. There were challenges throughout the changeover from Queen Elizabeth's protracted, steady reign to Charles's. Now 7 years old, Charles was questioned about his suitability as a contemporary monarch. Uncertainties remained over his personal life, previous choices, and capacity to maintain the same degree of unity and respect that his mother had cultivated over many years. Charles was under a lot of pressure to succeed at this time. The difficulties of assuming his new position and the intense public scrutiny that had followed him for a large portion of his life were obstacles he had to overcome. Beginning of a new reign. He confronted these uncertainties head-on in the early years of his rule, concentrating on matters crucial to him and the nation. As he had done for decades, he advocated for environmental concerns and sought to guarantee that the monarchy maintained tradition while adapting to the changing times. Some detractors who questioned King Charles's capacity for leadership were eventually silenced. Camilla's increasing acceptance and methodical approach have stabilized her status as the monarch. A more certain leadership style, befitting a man who has spent a lifetime training for this post, seems to have replaced the early shakiness of his reign, although there were doubts at the start of his reign. Standing strong. As his leadership continues to develop, Charles has already implemented several noteworthy measures that herald a new age for the monarchy. At 75, King Charles finally acknowledges what we all believed because of indications that he is prepared to assume responsibility for his recent attitude to his responsibilities. At the same time, he devoted decades to advocating for environmental concerns and expressing strong views on issues that were important to him. King Charles has acknowledged that rather than seeking radical changes, his leadership style has evolved into one that is more measured, conservative, and centered on maintaining the stability of the monarchy. Change in the approach. This shift in strategy is unmistakable proof that Charles may have finally accepted his position's responsibility, something the public had long doubted he would do. A heightened involvement in local and foreign affairs since taking the throne is among the most apparent indications of this change. Charles has taken on a more aggressive role than many expected and has shown a renewed commitment to his responsibilities. His intention to lead with a firm hand has been seen by his increased presence at state occasions, diplomatic meetings, and charitable engagements. He now has a full schedule of formal commitments and seems more committed than ever to representing the monarchy internationally. Against all odds. This increase in participation indicates a king keen to demonstrate that he can lead the kingdom properly, even at his advanced age. Charles's change is also evident in how he seems to accept criticism from the past. He was seen as aloof for years after his union with Princess Diana. Following the revelation of his affair with Camila, public opinion shifted dramatically against him. In a moment of reflection about Diana, Charles remarked, "Millions adored my wife." Diana's premature death only reinforced the perception that Charles had fallen short of his expectations as a husband, a future king, and most importantly, a father to young William and Harry. He also acknowledged what we all knew. She was a loving mother. Shadow of a legacy. As king, Charles has had to accept the public's lasting love for Princess Diana, since her legacy continues to throw a long shadow over the monarchy even decades after her death. He seemed to be at last prepared to face that legacy and accept the respect Diana commanded and the critiques resulting from their turbulent relationship. Another long-standing problem has been the estrangement between him and his sons, particularly after Diana's passing. The relationship with Prince Harry is still tense, and in recent years, Harry has publicly criticized the royal institution and his father. As part of his more significant attempt to preserve royal impartiality, Charles, on the other hand, seems to have adopted a more measured stance, opting not to participate in the continuing family turmoil publicly. This is a significant shift compared to his early years when Charles was more outspoken on contentious topics. Since he now seems more concerned with upholding the institution than advancing his opinions, his move toward a more conventional, controlled royal posture has gained him considerable respect. Stay tuned for more.
If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon